What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Hangover. I'm Daniel. Alongside with me, as always, is Shannon. Shannon, how's it going, my man? It's good to see you. It's been a little bit of time since I've seen you. How you been, my man?
I'm doing great, and missed you last week, but glad you're back. And we got another preseason game down and out of the way, and we can talk about it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Preseason game, indeed. Another one in the books. Another. How should I put it? The offense didn't really show up. At least on the scoreboard, 9-3, I believe, and first team offense has not yet put up a touchdown. The title is overreaction is guaranteed. Are you overreacting on that aspect so far?
No, I'm guilty as the next guy for overreacting last year, and I learned a very valuable lesson last year. When Kenny Pickett pitched a perfect preseason, every drive he started, he finished with a touchdown. And I thought, hey, they've turned the corner. It don't even matter if they got Matt Canada. Well, I was wrong, and dead wrong. So this year, before the first preseason game, I said it just doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. Classic line for Meatballs for everybody who's seen it. But so I refuse to overreact. Um, again, it's not about the score. It's not about how each unit looks per se, because they're doing a vanilla scheme, and half the stars on defense, or all of them really, are not playing. And then on offense, again, they're it's just your basic vanilla stuff. But what really does matter is execution, and the execution from certain players have not been there.
No, it hasn't. And I think in huge display this past weekend, Broderick Jones has shown that he's really struggling. And now I know he's got a big old brace on his arm there, and there's been a lot of reports that he's somewhat injured. If he's hampered to this point where it's becoming a little bit of a liability for the quarterbacks back there, shouldn't he kind of rest up a little bit? What are your thoughts on Broderick being out there if injured and being out there in his performance thus far?
Well, he stuck up the joint. I
Yeah.
mean, it was god awful. I mean, he couldn't get any push. He got bull rushed. He had terrible balance. He had terrible footwork, terrible fundamentals. Now, one, they keep doing this flippity floppity and him around on both sides. That's an injustice to the young man. He's a left tackle. Uh, and which arm is he wearing the brace on, Daniel?
I believe it's his right arm.
Exactly. And when you're playing right tackle, that's your leverage arm. That's your protection. And guys are getting into his body. I mean, he got bullied. It
Mhm.
was really, really bad. And again, so everybody wants to say, well, Russell Wilson. Wilson didn't have a shot. When it's always 3rd and 14, 3rd and 12, because they couldn't run the ball. And so they tried to throw on 3rd and long, and then Jones couldn't give him 2 seconds. So, I mean, I'm not going to judge Wilson on that, because he got sacked 3 times and they were all on Jones.
Yeah.
So I think that two things need to happen. They need to leave Jones on the left side, and also it wouldn't affect him as much, that arm injury and the brace being on that right side.
I agree with you. To me, I think the biggest problem that I see in this whole, making them earn it versus, trying to, get the offensive line together is come week one. If the goal is that Fatuano is going to start on the right side, the number one offensive line has had how much time together?
Yeah,
Even in practice, they weren't together.
yeah.
And so, the first time that they're going to get some real snaps as a unit is going to be the first time Fatuano comes back, after the injury. And, Frazier's in there now. Herbig, he's probably out for the season. He's got I think it's been reported, a torn rotator cuff. So Frazier's going to be in there. Um, this offensive line hasn't worked together. The starting group that you want in a brand new offensive scheme with a brand new quarterback. So I'm kind of nervous. I understand that it was just a preseason game, but it doesn't look like there's going to be an easy route. I think these growing pains are going to start right away, and they're going to show up pretty big. If this ends up being the case where the first time that they're together is week one, what are your thoughts?
That's far from ideal, as you said. And uh, Wilson being injured, doing something I've never heard of a quarterback doing during conditioning at the first day of camp, uh, pushing a blocking sled. I mean, come on. I mean, some of the decisions that have been made this training camp, I'm just kind of wondering who's calling the shots. You know, is the inmates running the asylum? Because some of this stuff, I mean, you drafted Frazier, you know he's your starter. Again, like I said, if Herbig was capable, he should have played last year. If somebody should be fired. So you draft Frazier, you know he's going to be the starter. He needs all the reps he can get. Jones needs all the reps at left tackle he can get. And Fuatanu needed all the reps at right tackle he could get. They wasted time. They just wasted a lot of that training camp. And then, like you said, you have guys injured. Now, Fuatano got injured. Wilson got injured early. Roman Wilson got injured. It's just not being the optimal training camp scenario we would all like to see. Because you really don't know what you have. The problem is they have to start the season strong. They have to have a good first half because the second half is going to be so tough. So, but again, I'm not going to overreact because they got one more preseason game and then they got 2 weeks before the start, the first kickoff. So they're going to have to get guys back and they're going to have to quit playing around and get serious about, okay, you see where the talent is, play the talent.
Yeah, I agree. For me, it seems like it's not so much the inmates running the asylum as much as the asylum is ran like it's 1950. They're using some old school tactics here. It's when there was 4 preseason games and training camp was a little bit longer, making a player earn it and having those games and still having the time for them to gel before the regular season was a possibility. It's not the case anymore. Now there's 17 games. They're fixing to go to 18, so they're probably going to drop one more preseason
it's going
game.
to be even shorter. Yeah,
exactly. So you got to kind of adjust with the times and adjust with what you're going to with that shorter amount of time and have to consider that ratio of earn it versus getting your team ready. And maybe perhaps consider starting to try something different by putting the team that you're going to want out there week one together initially. That way, even if there is a setback, somebody has a tweak, soft tissue, something, there's already some experience together. That way they're not completely jumping on a completely moving train once it comes down to the time when they get back. So I'm not trying to say I know anything more than anybody else, but this is confusing to me.
Well, you're absolutely right. But what really concerns a person, if you think about it, how many old school coaches are left?
Not very many.
I mean, Tomlin's old school. Yeah. And I know he wants to go with the way he was taught. But if you look at it, it's young guys. There's a ton of 30-year-old guys now in early 40s and guys that are modern that learn from modern, not a lot of them didn't even spend much time at the college level. And they've been assistant coaches and in the NFL. Now they've been promoted. And Tomlin, it's just like with Colbert. Colbert got stuck in the past. What worked in the first part of his tenure didn't work in the second half. Well, just like this with Tomlin, that making them earn it and all that stuff, when you, as you said, had 6 weeks, 7 weeks to get ready because it was a longer camp and it was more preseason games and all that was fine. You can't do that anymore. It's got to be, and you can't wait 2 years to play a guy anymore. They got to play as a rookie. Mm-hmm. If you're going to maximize that rookie deal, especially for a first-round pick, he's got to play right out of the box. And last year, they wasted Broderick Jones, playing him on the right side most of the time. This year, he would have been the established starter at left tackle, and he'd be ready to be a star. Now he is just, his footwork's getting screwed up. He does it, he's fundamentally not sound. He is not ready. And they had even shorter preseason to get him ready, and they still wasted time. I mean, I don't want to blame a lot of things on coaches because the players have still got to be ready and they got to perform. But anybody with any common sense can see that is not the efficient or effective way to utilize preseason.
Yeah, exactly. And And yeah, I mean, we can't beat the dead horse any more dead. It's just less time. Let's get these guys accustomed to each other, and especially when you have a quarterback like Russell Wilson, who also has been out significant amount of time of preseason and training camp early on. I think he just started getting number one reps here recently, leading up to this preseason game. So that's a huge aspect of that also being brand new and working together. I don't know, man. It's concerning come week one. And then you look, let's discuss the quarterbacks. I mean, everybody's wanting to talk about them as well. Russell Wilson versus Justin Fields. Both of them, I mean, I didn't like, I thought it was poor from both of them. I didn't like what I saw out of either or. But I don't think that you can really judge them fairly as well when they don't have that much time in front of them. What was your first impressions of Russell Wilson and his performance of his 5 drives of the night?
Well, not good enough. He looked
Mhm.
like a guy who hadn't practiced all preseason and training camp. And guess what? He hadn't.
Yeah.
Again, he's out pushing a blocking sled. Makes absolutely no sense. But we'll back off that. Then he's in there, and they're calling plays, a lot of checkdowns, and wonder why. Well, because he didn't have 2 seconds to throw the ball. Because Rodney Jones couldn't block anybody, much less quality players that the Bills had on their line. So I can't make a judgment on Russell Wilson other than he looked very rusty. It looked like his first time playing in a Steeler uniform in an offense he's not familiar with a bad right tackle and left tackle, as he was on both sides at different points. Uh, Justin Fields is Justin Fields. I mean, the guy can make the miraculous play, and he had to, because again, the line wasn't blocking much better. But when the one thing about it, they wasn't all the pressure up the middle that we've seen in past,
Mhm.
because Frazier started this game, and if you really watch Frazier, except there was a couple of run blitzes that they was asking him to try to get out into a wide zone and pick up a block, and it's impossible. And there was some penetration, but Frazier played a solid game, especially his first time as a starter for the Steelers. But uh, Fields, they went for it instead of kicking field goals again, because it doesn't matter if you win or lose in the preseason. So you want to try it. Let them try it on the fourth down. If you're going to go for it and see what works, now's the time in the preseason. Again, the throw to Luton or Luther in the end zone that he overthrew. If he'd have played with him more, that's his first time he ever threw him the ball. If
Yeah.
he would have played with him more and he would have run through the ball, he might have had a chance to catch it at the back part of the end zone. Because he did kind of, gear down and get ready to jump. Again, it was just a missed timing all the way around. I remember James Washington doing something similar a few years back. And, until he learned to play with, I think it was Ben that threw that one. But the quarterback position is going to have to improve. But here's the thing that concerns me more than that, Daniel, is this is offense is predicated on running the ball. They're not running well.
Mhm.
They did pretty good first week, but this past week they were not getting any push, and they wasn't running as well, and that put them in a lot of third and longs. And this offense is not going to feast on third and long. They can't get it in third and long because it's going to limit what they can call and what they can do. So there's issues, but again, it's still, I would say it's early, but it's not, because there's one preseason game left. But it's the season ain't started. We still got 3 weeks. So we just got to see improvement.
Yeah, we definitely do. For me, initially, my first impressions of Russ was obviously like kind of echoing everything you were saying about the rust and looking like a guy who maybe perhaps had a week of practice in the system with the guys around him. Uh, but also, there was times where it looked like he was checking down the ball, maybe perhaps. And from what I could see, I haven't seen the all 22 yet. I know it just came out, so I'm going to check that out after the show. But it also appeared that the wide receivers weren't really getting open from what I could see. And I think
Not
that's going to
much.
be
There wasn't much. No.
yeah, that's going to be a concern as well. I mean, he also has to have somewhere to throw the ball. And I think somebody had broken down one of the plays where he ended up checking it down to Freiermuth, and there was nobody, absolutely nobody open up in the, any of the wide receivers down the field, and there was nowhere for him to go. In those moments, I mean, unless you're expecting him to force the ball into a situation, if it ends up getting picked off, then we're going to blame him for throwing an interception. So it's a lose-lose situation in those scenarios. Um,
What was the deal with the route combinations? The week prior, we've seen a lot of crossing routes, late developing deeper run routes, and I understand they had better pass blocking,
mhm.
especially in the second quarter and the third quarter last week. This week, or the last game, I should say, they didn't have time to do anything down the field. So it was a lot of shorter stuff. And when they did get good blocking, as you say, there wasn't a lot of guys open.
Yeah.
And they took away the middle, and they made them throw short, or try the deep ball. And of course, they had one open shot there and they missed it. But I was disappointed. But again, I know they're not. It's kind of a vanilla game plan they're running out there. But
Yeah.
we still haven't seen Roman Wilson. I don't know if we'll see him till the regular season now. And but I think it's too early to panic. But I think everybody's concerned, and rightfully so.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely concerned. And, like I said, I want to see the all 22 and see what Russ was looking at. But I did notice that when he was throwing the ball, the ball didn't have the same velocity that like Justin Fields had on his throws. And some of them seemed to be a little bit on the lower end. And you know, he didn't have a lot of opportunities. There was some mistakes that were made as well from Calvin Austin. He had a false start that pushed the ball back. There was some other things that occurred that also put the ball, in not the best of opportunities to win. I mean, he had third and long a few times as well. When Justin Fields got into the game, I saw some of the same stuff that he was having to deal with, but because of his ability to move around, he was able to do a little bit more with his opportunities. Now, it wasn't a whole lot. And granted, yes, he had that one opportunity that he could have had in the end zone. And it's possible, if these guys had some more time together, and if the other guy didn't stop running, it could have been a touchdown. But there was another situation where he threw the ball on the sideline. I could have been intercepted at the same time, went through the
Yeah, the
hands
one
of a
that the guy
defender.
dropped. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it was Fitzpatrick who's the guy ended up catching it along the sideline. So, you know, after 2 games of preseason, I can't. All I want to say is I need to see more, and I'm disappointed with what we've seen. Moving on to the next game, how is this going to be handled? How would you like to see it handled? Is this a quarter, just two series? How would you split it? Who do you want to see with the first team come the week 3 preseason game?
Well, I think that it's not fair to try to judge Wilson totally on that. Like I said, because of Jones's struggles and the struggles of the line to run block, and you mentioned the false start penalty, so it was just he was put in some really bad situations. But I think that him and Fields definitely need to play a couple series with the first string, and see if can Russell knock the rust off and find some kind of rhythm in this offense. Can either one of them find rhythm in this offense before they open the season in Atlanta? Now, a lot of teams nowadays don't even hardly play their starters. If you have an established franchise quarterback, a lot of them don't hardly even see the field in the preseason at all. And that's why teams start out slow, like the Bengals did a few years ago, and different teams will start out the year slow. Steelers don't have that luxury. Neither one of these guys are proven in this system. The system's not proven because it's new, and there's tons of new people in new places. So, as much as there's a risk, like Jalen Warren getting hurt last week, they've got to play him. And I think both guys need to play with starters and see who has the best chemistry gives you the best shot to start out the season strong. You kind of hope it's Wilson, but Fields has had a lot more training camp, a lot more practice time, and his athleticism and elusiveness gives him an advantage in that department if the offensive line is struggling early. So, but yeah, they both got to play, and so a couple of series at least with the starters to see what the best option is.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and I'll give you more on my answer. And I'm going to ask you the question now, but I want your answer after the break.
Okay.
Can the position be changed based on the outcome of this next preseason game? Think about that. We're going to take a quick break, everybody. Don't go anywhere. After a few words from our sponsors, we'll be right back. And we're back. Thank you guys for sticking with us. We appreciate you guys. If you guys are tuning in on the YouTube side, please hit that like, please hit that subscribe button, ring that notification bell. And when you're done watching this, go check out the audio side only on the audio podcast. You'll check out mine that airs on Fridays. State of the Steelers comes out around noon. You don't want to miss it. The last one. You'll see how badly I predicted the game against the Bills. If you want to go back and listen to that debacle of a podcast now that the game is over, go ahead. But if you want to listen to my upcoming games prediction, you'll check it out this Friday. And you can check it out at stillcurrentnetwork.com. So I asked you before the break, can a decision be changed on the starting quarterback in this game? What are your thoughts? If it can, what has to be done for it to change?
Well, we know that there's a certain amount of stubbornness when it comes to the Steelers, the front office, the coaching staff. But I just think that if they come out and Fields looks more efficient and effective, and Wilson still doesn't look comfortable, and because in the line still looks as shaky as it did, then I think there definitely could be a switch, and you could see Fields start the season to try to maximize their potential to put some points on the board. Again, in a regular season game, they would have had at least 9 points, more than likely. Boswell, he did miss one field goal, but I don't think he'd have missed them 2 other ones because they were chippies.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we got to remember that. I mean, it was preseason and they played we're trying to figure out what they have. But I do think that it could switch if Fields looks much more efficient and effective. And the scenario, like I said, about the offensive line still needing time to gel and not looking up to snuff, that might force the Steelers' hands to start out with Fields.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely a possibility. I think that if Russ played just a little bit better, if the outcome on the offense was just a little bit better, if they could put at least some points on the board and look confident in doing so, moving the ball down the field, I don't think there would have been a performance that would have taken him out of the pole position. Now, I'm not so certain. I think that, we've all heard that Justin Fields has had a few days, in practice where the ball didn't touch the floor. He had a perfect day. If he has something like that in stadium somewhere or this weekend against the Detroit Lions, and if Russ doesn't put up, some kind of momentum or movement, I definitely can see the opportunity going into the little, I guess is what, a bye week before the regular season starts, where the Steelers maybe really truly put a decision there of making a decision there of switching out and maybe even starting Justin Fields, which is crazy because I didn't think that there was going to be that. I didn't think that was going to happen. I didn't think that there was going to be that opportunity for Justin Fields, especially after just one preseason game.
I know the Steelers didn't want that.
Yeah, that's true. They didn't. Kathy,
I know the Steelers and Tomlin didn't want that, but as Kathy says, play them both. I mean, I think we've all expect there, even if Russell Wilson had seized control of this situation, that we were going to see Fields in some specialty packages.
Yeah.
And, if it's, I don't want to see him going back and forth, but at the very least, you got to get Fields out there for the big play potential. Because if the offense looks like it did last game with Russell, even that's dink and dunk, that's last year. It looked too much like last year. And they're going to have to do what they have to do to get enough points on the scoreboard, because I think the defense will be fine. When you get all these stars back that haven't even played yet, I think the defense is way, way ahead of the offense. But they're going to have to figure out a way to score points. So I can see a scenario where they both play.
You know, I want to agree with you on that, but there's been a lot of reports that the offense has been kind of taking it to the defense in padded practices in the last few padded practices that they've had, whether it be on 7 shots or down there at the goal line.
Well, but you haven't heard about always. We got to remember this: when your superstars are established, to the point of T.J. Watt, Alex Highsmith, Cameron Hayward, the guys that ain't playing, Minka Fitzpatrick, when they're out there, they're going through the motions. If T.J. Watt was playing like T.J. Watt plays in the regular season, we'd have heard about him eating Broderick Jones's lunch.
Yeah.
He would have destroyed Broderick Jones. And we would have already heard about how bad Broderick Jones looks. Because now it's 2 preseason games, and Broderick Jones has not looked good in either one. And he looked disastrous last one. So, again, these guys are going through the motions, and the defense is, that gives the offense a little bit of, they make them feel good about themselves. It gives them a little self-confidence, and maybe they don't need it because they obviously need to get, I think they need to be tougher practices, but we know the rules nowadays. And it's not like it used to be. And everybody's so scared of your starters or stars getting injured. And I think it's been a lot of too much patty cake. And when you get a guy like Landon Robertson, he does stick somebody, then there's a big fight at camp because they're like, you ain't supposed to hit me like that. Well, back in those days, nobody would have thought anything of it because it happened every practice. So just because that the offense has been effective against the Steelers defense don't really prove anything to me because they sure haven't looked good against other teams' defenses.
That's true. That's very true. Speaking of injuries, and we kind of brought it up a little bit earlier, Jaylen Warren, he's going to be out a few weeks. Week 1 is in jeopardy.
Yep.
Do the Steelers keep another back on the 53? And I mean, how big is if he doesn't make, if he's not there week 1?
Well, honestly, you could say he was the Steelers' most consistent big player on offense last year. It was him and Pickens, but Warren was there all the time. Every game he showed up, made big plays to convert third downs, diving and twisting and dragging guys. And that's a huge loss. So I'm hoping that he doesn't miss any time. The problem is hammies are very fickle. He might come back, feel good the first week. Second week, you tweak it again, and it could be worse. So do you rest him a couple of weeks? I think if that happens, do you give some of these backup running backs have looked decent? And we know that you don't want to give too much on Harris. Edwards is very similar to Warren. He's not as powerful, but he's more scat back, elusive. So, yeah, there's definitely going to be 3 backs minimum and a guy on the practice squad. I was thinking that Patterson would probably be your 4th running back listed.
Yeah.
But, man, Patterson, I know they're not giving him any chances on these kickoffs, which I think they need to. Because right now, let's just say it, the Steelers special teams look special, but not in a good way. They are atrocious. They can't cover a kick. They can't block on the returns. The only person on special teams that looks good, because even Boswell was missing in practice. Nobody's talking about that. But he's shaky at camp a lot. But Johnston, that guy can kick the snot out of that ball. I mean, we finally got a punter, unless Danny Smith gets some bubblegum juice on him and curses him like he's done every other punter we ever had. But so far, Johnson looks awesome.
Yeah, yeah, he sure does. I mean, I was gonna say, I don't know, man. The punter's been our star so far
Oh yeah,
up to
he's the
this
best
point.
player.
It's been crazy. Uh, for me with Jalen Warren, that first game being the game that counts the least. In my opinion, when it comes to all of the games on the schedule, it's the extra game against the non-divisional, non-conference team.
Yeah,
It's the Falcons. So no, the other teams in our division don't play that team or in our conference or our division. I'm sorry. So I would rest them that game. As you said, hamstrings can be a little finicky. They can come and go, and you think you can be ready to go, and
there it
just
goes.
one thing, and you're back to square one. And so, eh, because of that, I think I would sit him the Atlanta Falcons game. Regardless. And I think that when it comes to the backup running backs, I don't necessarily think you need to have an extra one on the roster, so to speak. I think either P Ryan or Ward, one of those guys will make it to the practice squad. You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah,
so
yeah, yeah.
it'll be a determination of which one can make it to the practice squad. I'm sure that the Steelers might have their preference of one over the other. And if that person ends up or if both of them are still eligible after the 53 cut, and you can put both of them or the one that you want to on the practice squad and then elevate that person, perfect. But I don't think that all of the backup running backs are going to be taken up. I think there's going to be at least one of those guys that's going to be available. When it comes to Cordell Patterson, he was, I guess, during I think it was the joint practice. Apparently, when they were doing the kickoffs, he was standing at the goal line, kind of watching everything. I think they intend on using him in that position, but I don't think they want to risk him in the preseason. So I think we might end up seeing him as a kickoff returner come week one. And I don't know if we're going to see him doing that until then.
Yeah, I agree. He's been hurt.
That's
He's only
true.
been back like a week. And I just got this weird feeling. Every time I watch Patterson walk around, talk to reporters, and when they was working him at running back against the Bills in that practice session, I just keep getting this Patrick Peterson flashback of a guy that used to be really, really good. And I was really excited because I wanted the Steelers to sign him 2 years ago, and I wanted them to sign him last year.
Mm-hmm.
Now I think that they're getting the old, worn out, bald tires Patterson.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm concerned that if we're being honest, if you're not counting his past performances and accomplishments, I don't know if he should really make this football team.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, I want to see him returning kicks against the Lions and see if he still has a little burst and see if he still has that elusiveness. Because they run him, one or two plays the last game, and it didn't look good. It looked like he was moving in slow motion. Now, before he got injured, they said that he always comes to camp out of shape. And then he gets in shape during camp. But as you get older, we all know that's harder to do. And I wasn't concerned about it. Well, then he was hurt for a long period of time, and now he's just got back. So now you got an older guy who might have already lost a step, and now he's out of shape too. Because he hasn't practiced enough to get back in shape. He said that himself. So does he deserve to make this team?
I don't know. I mean, you're right. He didn't look like he was in the best of shape in uniform. He was jogging around out there. I was like, so is Presley back? But yeah, he did look like he was running in slow motion. Yeah, but I think you're right. I mean, he hasn't done anything to deserve to be on the team, to be given a slot, regardless of his lack of performance during the preseason. Now, I know he has a relationship with Arthur Smith going back to the Falcons, and I think that might have something to do with why they're keeping Cordell Patterson on the roster. I know that there's a special. Wasn't there a special package where he was also on the field with Jalen Warren and Justin Fields and Najee Harris in the backfield?
Yeah, they called it the diamond, or I
The
think it
Death
was the
Star.
diamond. Yeah,
Yeah, the Death Star.
the Death
And
Star. That's what it was. Yeah.
and so I don't know, man. I don't know how that Death Star is looking with Patterson now.
But can
Back there.
can he get around the edge? Because I mean, in that scenario, they wanted him to be able to get out wide, and with his elusive, like gaining the edge of the kick return. And I understand it made total sense, but he don't look like the same Patterson that I remember. And what really concerns me is right at the start of the whole camp and everything, he was like, "Yeah, I'm not in the top condition," and the Steelers wasn't happy with him. He says, "But I always get in condition, 2-3 weeks into camp." Well, one camp shorter now, but he missed a ton of what time injured. So now I'm like, when did he get in shape? But I know the answer, he didn't.
Yeah. No, he definitely did not. Another injury that came out, we haven't really gotten some clarity on the defensive side. Peyton Wilson went down with looked into as far as concussion, which I don't think that there's a better injury, but at first it looked like it was his ankle.
Yeah, I
I
was
thought
scared. I was scared.
I
Yeah.
thought something happened to his leg or his
Yep,
ankle,
me too.
and then they said he's in concussion protocol. I didn't see a hit to the head. I haven't seen it since. So maybe perhaps somebody else had seen it. Uh, it doesn't sound like he's gonna play this week. I mean, they end up picking up a linebacker guy from the USFL, I believe. He was formerly of the 49ers. I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but they just signed him, I think, today.
I practice saying it,
All
but
right,
I
so I'll
got
let
to
you
see
say
it to say it because it's a tough one. I mean, both of them have 4 syllables. His first name has 4 syllables, and his second name has 4 syllables, and I'll just butcher it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's funny. He sounds like Mark Robertson.
Uh-huh.
He's shorter. He's a hitter.
Yeah.
He's terrible in coverage. So I think he's a body until Wilson comes back.
Yeah, I agree.
It'd be
I
great if he was
agree.
more, but it don't look good.
No. Jay's Upper Teeth comes in with a $2 super chat. Shannon, his past bald tires he has a donut on. He's past bald tires. He has a donut on. There you go. I get it.
And he's just riding around with it, baby. I've seen people do that. That's hilarious.
Yeah. No.
It's only supposed to be to get you somewhere, so you can get a tire. They just ride around with it.
Were you stalking me there, Shannon? I may have had a spare on for a little bit longer than I wanted to, not too long ago, but that was because my tires took a while to come in.
Yeah, well, that's okay. That's okay.
So this week, do you think we're going to see TJ or Cam, or do you think these guys are going to be striking out when it comes to appearances in preseason this year?
I'd like to see him. I mean, TJ acted like he really wanted to play, and then they never really said why. People talked about the field conditions and everything, but now Detroit's indoors and it's artificial turf, and that can be dangerous too.
Yeah.
And I've heard some things that turf is pretty rough. That it's like falling on concrete. So that being said, it wouldn't shock me if they didn't play him again.
Yeah, I wouldn't play them. I'd just keep them out. What's the point at this point? They've already sat up preseason.
Yeah, give them 8 plays. I mean, what's it going to accomplish?
Exactly. So get them ready. They're going to play in Atlanta. I mean, well, they're playing Atlanta in Atlanta the first game. That's on turf. Maybe a series, kind of get them used to it, or just the warm ups. Get them out there warming up. Yeah. I know that they were dressed for the last game, but I think because of the rain situation, which is why I think also like Josh Allen didn't play, and we ended up seeing Mitch Trubisky, which he got a standing ovation sort of when he ended up stepping out onto the field. That you could hear from the few fans that were there. But yeah, he ended up throwing an interception there. Reminded us of that. He is who he is.
Yes, exactly. You can't help yourself.
I think at one point that may have been, it was in practice. He threw the ball out of bounds or something like that, and George Pickens ended up catching
right to Pickens.
Supposedly George ended up saying something like, "He still wants to throw to me."
Yeah.
Good times, man.
Good Good guy, just not a good quarterback.
No, not at all. Um, Speaking of wide receivers, there's been a few reports, and we'll talk just briefly about it. Brandon Ayuk still hasn't signed anything anywhere else. There's been leaks as to what the Steelers have offered him and what the Steelers have offered the 49ers. Now, I don't know how true any of these leaks are, but I'll ask you if this is what the offer was. Are you surprised or not surprised that the deal hasn't gone through? I believe it was a second and a third round pick for Ayuk. What do you think about that as far as trade value from the Steelers to the 49ers?
I mean, for the Niners, in my opinion, they got Ricky Pearsall this year in the draft.
Mm-hmm.
They got Samuel, which they'll have to make a decision about him after the year. They've got a couple other guys. They re-signed Jennings, who I wanted the Steelers to go after because I thought he was going to be a free agent.
Mm-hmm.
Jennings, who threw the touchdown in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
He's a very versatile player, good blocker, quality number 2 guy. I wanted him, but then the Niners signed him back. And I don't know what John Lynch is doing. The way they've handled this situation, he could have got more if he'd have traded around the draft when the Steelers were first interested. And now you have vetoing deals, and he's saying that he only wants to play for Pittsburgh or stay in San Francisco. But it looks more and more like he used the Steelers as leverage. And the other teams jumped in there wanting him, and you know how that goes. But, all right, look how this offense looks right now. And these guys have been there the whole camp. You're going to bring in a guy who's been part of a very competent offense in the San Francisco and throw him in the middle of this situation with no time to learn the offense, no experience working with either quarterback. It's the timing's terrible, especially what it would cost to give up a second and a third and what they're going to have to pay him.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is ship sailed there. I said last week when that fell through, I would say I'd just pull my offer. Take the leverage away from Mayock. He's going to have to stay in San Francisco or go play for the Patriots or Cleveland. But don't let him keep using you. And I would have pulled the offer, and then I would have looked seriously, if they are serious about getting somebody, in one of these other teams that have excess amount of talented receivers. I've heard Mitchie mentioned. I've heard different guys that could maybe be acquired. And I would have turned my attention elsewhere if they're really that serious about it. But as far as, in my opinion, I'm done with it. If it happens, so be it. But I don't think it'll take him a while to even be useful.
Well, here's the thing about the leverage aspect. I find it odd that he's using the Steelers because, according to NBC Sports, the amount that the Steelers were going to be offering him was less than $28 million per year.
I heard 28.
Yeah. There's
now, but if it's the same thing I read, 28 million for the 49ers to match is 31 million because of the tax difference.
Mm-hmm.
So the Niners would do 28, but that's a lot less money than it would be if he played in Pittsburgh for 28.
Right.
I think it was they'd have to give him at least 30 and a half to make it the same, almost 31. And the Niners are not wanting to give up that much. So, I mean, I think he's just, what's he accomplishing? One, he's not practicing, which he probably don't want to practice.
Yeah.
And so I still think he's using it as leverage. And I think the Steelers ought to say, we're not, you either want to play for us or you don't. And we're tired of being leveraged.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's a confusing situation because, the Patriots, I think, were offering 32 and giving up a lot more than what the Steelers are willing to give up. He vetoed it. He didn't want to go there.
And the Browns were offering more, I think.
Yeah, the Browns were offering more, both in compensation and in finance to the player. So it's weird that he's using the Steelers, who is the least the least of those offers. Maybe perhaps because those guys were really ready to push the the trade. I guess, maybe the only reason he's pushing the Steelers is because they're offering San Francisco the least.
Well, I also think every guy wants to play for Mike Tomlin.
That's true. There's
When,
that aspect.
when you hear about a player's coach, the ultimate player's coach is Mike Tomlin, because very seldom does he ever hang a guy out to dry. Now, if he doesn't like you, for a long time, he was not going to play Mason Rudolph. You knew it. I knew it. Everybody in the stadium knew it. And the only reason he did play Rudolph is he ran out of options. But that was my concern, whether Rudolph would come back or not, is because I think that Rudolph was Colbert's guy, not Tomlin's guy. Mm-hmm. But if you are a Tomlin guy, he's going to stand by you. He's going to, like the days off some of these guys are getting in camp. Samalu hardly plays. And he hardly practices because they know what they got in him, and he's a veteran, and he protects his veterans.
Yeah.
And so you get a guy that's accomplished and proven in the NFL, you want to play for a coach like Tomlin.
That's true. There is the Tomlin effect on players who want to, go out there and play for a team. Or a coach. It always comes down to, people always say Tomlin. They usually side with their wallet. It's not the first time somebody said that. Yeah. It's not the first time somebody said they wanted to play for Tomlin and chose differently. It wouldn't be the first. And so, I'm with you, man. Like, I kind of forgot about the whole situation. And then all of a sudden I just started seeing on my feed again that, what was broke, basically what the compensation that was put out there for him and what the Steelers were willing to give up and how it hasn't changed, and to a certain extent, I guess, what do the Steelers have to lose by pulling the offer off the table? If just, they're not going to get him anyways. It's just, all right, whatever.
It just looks like they're getting jerked around. Honestly, it does. And I think that, I know Con, he don't care. Con's threw out the offer. He's letting it fester. He's letting it just drive the 49ers crazy. And he's just going about his business. Mm-hmm. But as I said the other day, who it drives crazy is the fans.
Yeah.
I've read, if they were able to trade for a hook, this is a Super Bowl team. I've heard that I don't know how many times. And I'm sitting there and I'm looking at it and I don't see it. We have no clue what the Steelers have at quarterback yet. None. We don't know if this offense is going to be effective. We don't know how long it's going to take the line to gel. There's so many questions. One guy, and a hook is not that guy, but one guy is not going to come in there. I don't think that Justin Jefferson or Cooper Kupp can come in and turn this into a Super Bowl offense. I really don't. It's going to take time, and it's going to be a long season, but I want to see that progression up. But it's drove the fans crazy, and therefore it's drove all of us crazy. Yeah. Because, you can't have a conversation that isn't the center of discussion. And there's a lot of other more important things to focus on right now with this offense.
Yeah. No, I don't disagree with you there. But if the Steelers don't get Ayuk, do they go after another wide receiver? There's the CeeDee Lambs of the world who are very, disappointed with their current situation. I think there was some more, Instagram posts that were put out there that were cryptic or whatever the case may have been. Would you consider, or do you think the Steelers are considering maybe perhaps bringing in a different wide receiver, especially after the performance that the wide receivers have had the last couple of games, outside of George Pickens' crazy catch on the sideline that was robbed from him? It was robbed from him. That was a catch.
That was insane, yes.
That was a catch. His hand, he was starting to drag at the same time as he caught the ball. Well, anyways, outside of George Pickens in that play right there, there's not been a lot of separation between the receivers. Do the Steelers consider going out and getting another one?
It depends on. I wish Roman Wilson hadn't got hurt.
I agree.
Guys, I'm really high on him. I like Van Jefferson a lot more than I think a lot of people do as the 3, but I wanted to see Roman Wilson compete for the number 2, because I do believe he's going to be a established starter down the road, but now he's behind in everything, as we know. The offer that they're offering out there, have they approached? I do not want to see CeeDee Lamb. I think that playing in Dallas, there is some bad habits, some elitism that come from playing in Dallas, the way that you're treated. Mm-hmm. And I don't think the Steelers, they're totally different franchises. I don't think you want to bring in a guy based on expectations. It even showed up if you watched the Hard Knocks when the Cowboys were on there. It's totally different. So, but what if DK Metcalf? There's a couple of other guys out there that they could look at, but there's going to be some guys probably due to salary that's going to come available between now and the start of the season. They're either going to be waived or they might, be a trade option. And because anybody you bring in right now, they're still going to be starting on as you say, jumping on a moving train. So I would look that way. I would start focusing that way, because I would like another receiver with size who could kind of mimic Pickens a little bit in case Pickens gets hurt. And then if you bring him in, he might could get some reps as that number 2 receiver as well. It don't have to be a guy that's going to challenge Pickens for number 1. Because I said all along, I didn't think that was the best option.
Yeah.
But, I'm like you. I mean, the only reason I would even consider it, 1, Roman Wilson's injury, and 2, the last game, they wasn't getting any separation.
Yeah, it was concerning. There was no separation there. I think Scotty Miller is a guy that showed a little bit out there. Calvin Austin didn't have himself the greatest of games, in my opinion. And you just have a bunch of other guys that are depth that it's concerning. I think it needs to be addressed. The Steelers have seen that it definitely needs to be addressed. If they're willing to offer, to a second and a third and paying a guy $28 million a year, I mean, they got to be serious about the position. You know what I'm saying? And seeing a concern. You don't just kind of look into that and make a decision like that into a position without seeing the need. The Steelers didn't draft or trade for Minkah Fitzpatrick just because he was available. They had a need there at the safety position as well. That they were willing to give up a first rounder for him. So, I think the Steelers see the need there, and maybe perhaps you're absolutely right. There's going to be a lot of players. I think the Texans wide receiver core is pretty deep that they're not going to be able to keep everybody. So you're absolutely right there. But that's all I got for everybody. Do you have any final words or things you want to add on before we call it a show?
No, I've heard different people talk about, is there going to be 1, 2, or 3 guys that's not currently on the roster on the opening week roster? And that's quite possible. There's going to be guys hit the waiver wire or be cut, not make the roster, and the Steelers will, Con and him have been paying attention. And I believe that they will pick up a couple of guys, and a couple of the guys it looks like, they're going to make it, and they're not going to make it, after camp. But it happens every year. And but it's looking honestly more and more like a hook is not happening. I just, if it does, fine. If not, I'm not losing any sleep over it, and I don't think the Steelers are either.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that one. I can think of at least a few positions where I think that some guys are going to end up on this team. Probably a cornerback. I can see a cornerback being put on this roster, a receiver, maybe even a running back. The guys we're talking about right now are guys that are on the team, but who knows who can be released come the time the 53 comes that the Steelers might want to end up taking a bigger chance on while Jaylen Warren is healing up. So
exactly. Teams like younger, cheaper.
Exactly. Well, guys, that's going to be it for us today. I appreciate everybody tuning in. Please hit the like, subscribe if you're watching this on the YouTube side. Even if you're watching this on the replay, liking and subscribing helps us out there as well. So make sure you do that tomorrow. Big Brosco show. You don't want to miss it. Until next time, we'll see you guys later. Shannon, take us out, my man.